Seems like Christmas was eons ago, and yet it sort of seems like it was yesterday. The lights are almost gone. Well, at our house, they're unplugged at least. The decorations are mostly boxed back up, except for the stray one that you left out. And here at church, though, we are still in the season, in our final day of the season, where we celebrate Epiphany. This week I stumbled across this Haitian proverb: if you want to see, you need to look twice. If you want to see, you need to look twice. Seems like good wisdom for today, a day to take a second look at a familiar story. To take another look when we're away from the commercial season, the hustle and bustle that is the end of December. A second look at the birth of Jesus. Now, at first glance, we know a story that has shepherds and wise men all visiting Jesus together. And at second glance, we know that it's actually two separate books, two separate stories telling us this, and somehow in our heads and in our manger scenes and in our stories, we've mushed them all together. And at the second glance, we realize that Matthew tells us that the Magi actually more likely visited Jesus a couple of years after he was born, while Luke has the shepherds visiting the night of or the next day that Jesus was born. At first glance, we know that 3 wise men or 3 kings visited. And as we talked about in the quiz and the trivia at the beginning, we know at second glance that there are 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and that there's an unknown number of wise ones who visit. And we're not exactly sure who they were. Were they astrologers? Were they royalty? Were they men? Were they women? We don't really know. At first glance, the wise ones are following a star high up in the sky. And at second glance, we can debate, along with the biblical scholars, for hours about what kind of astrological event could have taken place. If it was a normal, everyday event, some sort of superstar, some sort of super-duper, giant, godlike star, we can talk for hours. We can read books and volumes about it. But this second glance leads us to consider what we are to follow. Now, regardless of what actually happened on the night that Jesus was born, or 2 years after Jesus was born, I think we can all agree that we are not really here to talk about following some astrological phenomenon. But what then are we following? Now, my niece is 14, and Lanessa, when she was about 10, was all about the band One Direction. Don't tell her if you see her, she still is, but, she's infatuated. Now, when I was 10, Christmas that year was all about New Kids on the Block. And now, we all likely have our story of around that age where we were infatuated with some star, right? Today, kids follow them on the internet. We followed them in teen magazines or the newspaper or however, the TV, the magazines, the movies. But clearly, that is not the star that we are to follow. It's not a celebrity star. It's not an astrological phenomenon. So maybe we're supposed to follow Jesus Christ Superstar. Now we're getting closer, but Jesus, the Son of God, is the one that we are called to follow, not some guy in a musical, no matter how awesome Hamilton might be. Now, friends, at first glance, we can find our way to the babe lying in a manger. That story that is familiar, that story that is comfortable, that story that gives us the warm fuzzies, that story that kind of surrounds us in this Christmas light glow. And we can think that that's the one we're going to follow. But at second glance, when we look a little closer, We are called to follow God incarnate in Jesus, the one who does way more than sleep in the hay with no crying he make. We are to follow Jesus, the one who befriended the least popular people in society. We are to follow Jesus, the one who advocated for and actually shared with the least of these. We are to follow Jesus, the one who puts love before all else. No exceptions. We are not called to follow some astrological event. We're not called to follow a celebrity star. We are not called to follow a musical Jesus Christ superstar. And we're not even called to follow a baby who doesn't cry laying in some hay. We are called to follow Jesus, God incarnate. That is the star of our lives. That is the focus. That is so much harder than all those other ones. But that is what goes before us. Jesus goes before us to lead us, to guide us in ways that none of those other things can do. So as we move into this new year, may we all follow Jesus as the wise ones followed that star so long ago. Amen.